Okay, so here you have it. We are going to do our first reaction video. I'm very excited since, as you know, love YouTube and what the power it can do, and I'm trying out different formats of videos that I can do. So I'm going to start with a reaction video that you sent me, and it's a little deep. This video is 4 minutes. My commentary, I watched it once. There were a lot of thoughts that I had, and I think the only way I could convey them is by doing a reaction video. So we'll listen, and I could pause and just give my thoughts. So here we go. Let's go and let's jump right in.
Greatest enemy. They're not a rival. They're not a competitor. They are an enemy of the United States. They want our way of life eliminated. They want to take over the world through their Belt and Road Initiative. They are a godless society that is focused on the complete destruction of the American nation and of Western civilization. And so I believe it's time to have a goal that we should decouple from China altogether. And I think that we should have a goal of self-sufficiency where, first of all, let's just make a stated goal that vitamin C and essential materials for medicine should no longer be made in China immediately. That never again should we have to count on personal protection equipment to be flown in on planes from China to try and help us with the virus that they unleashed on us.
Okay, a lot of points to unpack over there. So he's starting with the premise that China is an enemy. It's a tough one. I don't think enemy is the right word, although the ideas that he's saying are correct, that they do want to destroy American way of life, and they do want to be the super world power. An enemy is somebody who you can't and don't do any business with. I would describe China as an adversary, which means we have different approaches to life, but we are still able to do things that are mutually beneficial to each other, like trade, for example. So that's number one. He's talking about not relying on China for essential items. So not relying on an adversary for essential items is probably a smart idea. You should always be able to rely on yourself for essential items. I would say that given the once in a lifetime opportunities, it doesn't make sense to go and start building PPP factories in America, because maybe in 100 years we're going to have another virus, and maybe the Chinese government or whichever country is around then won't give it to us as quick as we need it. So essential items you do want to always do yourself, in your personal life. Anything that's essential to your being you want to be able to do yourself, and anything that's ancillary to your being you're happy to farm out. And with the virus that they unleashed on the US, I'm not going to get too involved in that, but let's carry on.
So what we should do with China, I don't want a war either. It seems like China is getting us closer and closer to that. The drums of war are beating. They're building islands in the South China Sea. They're dumping steel. They're dumping solar panels. They're intentionally...
Okay, so he's saying a whole bunch of different things over here. He's talking about the islands in the South China Sea. See, if you have the approach that America is the moral compass of the world, then a lot of things that China does is a problem. If you have the approach that America needs to worry purely on itself and shouldn't be worrying about all the world's problems, then ideas like China wanted to become strong. China has the right to become strong, just like America has the right to become strong and overtake its own islands as it's done in the past. China's doing the same thing. Now, if you live in the South China Sea, you're in the Philippines, or you're in Japan, or you're part of Indonesia, then these things should actually worry you. For an American, I believe America should be taking a more of an isolationist approach than they already have. So ideas of them militarizing the South China Sea shouldn't be. I'm not worried. I wouldn't be. Not that I wouldn't be worried about, But I don't think it's my business as America. The second thing he touched on is a really all different point, and I think instead
They're
of
dumping.
just taking everything and lumping it in some, oh God, China's doing all these bad things, you really have to understand each idea separately and then make calls from that. So he's talking about over here a little bit of unfair trade practices. I think it's a great point to bring on, that if you're trading, I believe in fair trade and free trade, but so there shouldn't be any tariffs or anything like that. But obviously, if there are unfair practices, then you need to be able to respond in kind. So if China is dumping steel, and what dumping steel essentially means is they are giving us, okay, dumping steel means that they are selling steel to America on marginal cost as opposed to average cost, and that means they are undercutting the whole steel industry in America. So average cost versus marginal cost, very simply, is if I make a million cell phones, it costs me $100 million. So my average cost is $100 each cell phone. But if I make 1,000,001 cell phones, it's actually only going to cost me an extra $10 for that one last cell phone. So average cost will be $100, but marginal cost is only that extra $10 for that last one. So companies do this all the time when they sell to one market on average cost plus, but if they want to enter another market, they will sell it on marginal cost. So the Chinese do that. They will sell steel on the marginal cost basis, so they're dumping the steel on America, killing the whole American steel industry, because America's cost is $100, the Chinese are able to sell it for 10. Sometimes also dumping is if you take government subsidies, but really it's almost an act of manipulation to kill another country's industry. And I believe that country does have the right, to take measures, but then you need to understand at the end of the day is who's benefiting. So the steel companies are losing out because they can't sell their steel anymore, but guess who's winning? All the end consumers. So the end consumers are now paying $10 for the steel instead of paying $100 for the steel. I'm exaggerating the numbers. So that seems like a win. The other argument is if you eventually do that for everything, then America won't be producing anything and we won't be having any money. I don't like that argument. I think as we technologically advance, it's a funny argument that they had in the Trump administration. They had two arguments. They had one argument that China stole all the manufacturing jobs, and there's no good manufacturing jobs left in America. And then the second argument that they had is we have the lowest unemployment, so everybody's employed. Granted, a lot of them are low-wage jobs, but no, a lot of them are high-wage earning jobs. The average earner still earns more than the average earner in China. So it's complicated, and there's a lot of factors. Let's try to carry on. Let's see what else he has to say. I feel like this is going to be a very long video, so I hope you have the patience.
Solar panels. They're intentionally deindustrializing our economy. And for those of us that grew up in the conservative movement 10 years ago, we were told the best thing is unlimited, unrestricted trade with China. Now, there's a place for global trade. Of course there is. We want to sell our products. And if another country does something really well, then we want to be able to buy their products as well. But here's the problem. I think we conflated good products with cheap products. We made a deal with the Chinese Communist Party 30 years ago that we never should have made, which was we decided to make an idol out of piles of plastic and meaningless piles of stuff that quite honestly came at a cost, and that cost was this. We're no longer going to make material things in our country. And we are
So he's first starting about this whole pile of plastics, of useless stuff, which I agree with. It's a problem with American consumerism, but it has nothing to do with China. It has to do with Americans, just not Americans, but the Western world and in a very advanced society, just wanting stuff, useless stuff, that may not be sustainable for the environment. It's not related to China. China just made it cheaper.
Told by our leaders, and we were told by the ruling class, that's a good thing. It's a good thing that people in Ohio and Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Kentucky and Tennessee in particular, and even this state, it's a good thing that you don't have to go actually work with your hands. We're going to become a technology economy. You guys have heard this before, right? An information economy. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, first of all, highly specialized. So only a small group of people actually get to participate in it. It's very speculative, and you can't touch it. You can't. A country needs a strong base in the development of hardware.
He has no basis to what he's saying. That's not true. Why is it true? Why can't a country just have soft goods? I did mention right at the beginning that the core, you do want to have the core of what you need, but it's not a world with just two countries, with just China and America, and therefore China decides to stop selling us goods, we can't go anywhere else. There's 200 other countries. So we need to do what we do best. So if America is best at creating software, then that's what we do. We don't waste our time farming potatoes. So I disagree with him on this point.
Cars, steel, homes, lumber, things that actually have a utility, and there's only a finite amount of it. So we decided 30 years ago, we're just going to allow China to do all of it. We lost 15 million manufacturing jobs. I think we have to have a complete decoupling. I think we have to say, we're not going to make stuff in China anymore. And if you make stuff in China and you do business with China, I'm not going to buy your stuff. I know it's not easy. I know there's stuff that you guys, probably say, I got to have a process to this. But we, as Americans, there's nothing the Chinese can do that we can't do. They just steal all of our ideas. They only do it cheaper than us. So I admit, we make stuff here, you're right, prices will go up. But I would rather have less, higher quality stuff that I really care about. Jackets that I know, for example, that are made by Americans, than piles of this stuff that's it wears down and I don't actually appreciate it. Finally, from
Okay, so you're welcome to do that. I think the free market has already determined that. There's stores that sell Chinese-made goods and there's stores that sell American-made goods, and people can make the choice what they want to buy. If he's arguing and he wants to convince Americans the greatness of the American goods and why they should pay more, he's welcome to do that. But me personally, I'm going to buy the most efficient item, so I wouldn't pay 3 times the price for something that's only double the quality. It would have to be triple the quality in order for me to pay 3 times the price. But again, whatever the shops, there's hundreds of stores around the country, thousands of stores and tens of thousands of products, and you could go and buy whatever suits you. If China does it cheaply, let them do it cheaper, and then we get more stuff with my money.
a geopolitical standpoint, it's time for us to strike back against China. They have cyber warfare against us. We should launch cyber warfare against them.
Okay, this I 100% agree with. This is where China's acting unfair, because China steals American-made intellectual property, and that allows them to do things very cheaply. So I haven't thought out a good process. I don't know too much about all the trade details, but there does need to be some sort of pushback, or more than pushback, against China for this. And it doesn't mean a complete decoupling. It doesn't mean that we're not going to make that nobody could buy shirts in China anymore. No, there has to be, for example, let's just carry on. I think you mentioned some solutions, but to this specifically, it's not a huge problem with China. There's a specific problem. Deal with that specific problem.
We should have sanctions on China. They have to suffer for what they did with the Chinese coronavirus. They lied about it on the world stage. They should be...
Okay, again, he's trying to just portray this big picture that China is this big, bad man. Very briefly, we have to separate between the Chinese people and the Chinese government, which unfortunately controls the Chinese people And often when you sanction a country, it's the citizens that lose out. And there's a big discussion whether sanctions actually work or not. So I'm hoping he's talking about specifically sanctioning government officials. That could be totally shut down. The Belt and Road Initiative, I don't know why he wants to shut them down. I don't know too much about it, but my understanding is that they're just trying to build infrastructure around the world to make themselves more powerful. They're a sovereign nation. They have the right to. America did the same thing in Europe after the war. They had the Marshall Plan. They built up South Korea. They built up Japan. America has bases around the world. In over 100 countries, there's American bases, army bases. I don't think any other country in the world has any army bases outside of the home country, but America has bases around the world. So, if you're coming from the standpoint that America is the moral high ground and police force of the world, then I kind of get what he's saying. But China has the right to go in other countries and help them build up their economy for their own influence.
Shut down for the Belt and Road Initiative, and Joe Biden's not going to do this, and I wish Trump would have been even harsher on China, quite honestly, is that every single ally from Japan to South Korea to everyone in Asia, there should be an alliance, a worldwide alliance against the evil, that's right, Chinese Communist Party that has 1 million Muslims in concentration camps to choke them out the way we did to the Soviet Union.
Just briefly, yeah, it's a whole other point. I will leave that out.
China's on pace to be the global superpower. We are all that stands in their way.
Yeah, so China's on pace to be the global superpower. That's true. And what is the solution to that? Is the solution to knock them down, or is the solution to look inward and say, hey, what are we doing wrong? Why are we losing ground? What can we do better to make sure that we don't lose our superpower status? Not how could we knock down the next guy coming up.
But our ruling class is purchased by China because they put a love of money above a loyalty to our country.
Okay, nice talking about just politics is dirty, and that's true. Politics is always dirty and corrupt, and we have a big problem with that.
We're going to change that. That should be our stance to China. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's my first video. I hope all the sound worked.